Alrighty, we have some continued business here, compensation.
Well, I've done some poking around and brought some information. Give you a couple of items. We were talking last time about cost of living adjustment. How do you get your arms around that? And one thing that can help us look at that is information comes out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What I printed here is consumer price index of basically the northern New England area. That's as close as it gets to us. It's a little bit different than the national numbers. And if you look at the somewhere in here is the number. I'm not sure that it's all right. It's actually at the very top of the second page.
2016
percent change from 12 months ago. Yeah. And this is as of July. These regional numbers apparently they only do every 2 months, every month. But what this says is that the consumer price index in this market has gone up by 1.5% in the 12 months ending in July. What I have attached to the back of it is a example pay structure that adjusts 1.5%. We talked last time about, gee, maybe you drop out pay grade 1 and you add another one afterwards at the end. And I guess what I am offering is perhaps a more sustainable way of doing it is looking at the whole chart and adjusting it by whatever the amount for cost of living adjustment is, so that the table itself never gets, you don't eliminate grades, you just adjust everything up a little bit. For
and
that.
You don't have job creep onto another one.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So my understanding is that when we look at merit increases, that occurs timed with anniversary date and or annual review date for individuals. In other words, those don't all happen at the same time.
No.
The increases?
The merit increases.
The increase from one step to another happens on January 1st for everybody.
Not as a result of a performance review.
As a result of a performance review in the prior year that is satisfactory.
Okay.
And that's if it passes town meeting and it's written by a municipal budget act, we aren't supposed to.
Yeah, we retroactive.
We can't play those games.
Okay. So this, what I've done with this example is increased wage rate by 1.5%.
So when we give an increase, step increase, they'll get 3.5%.
I approached, Don?
I know it is important to get this set as we go into the budgeting process, but how important is it to be set before we're into the budget process? In other words, if we're basing an adjustment on changes in the consumer pricing index, what we have today is through July. Don't know that data later in the year is going to necessarily be helpful, but changing the compensation piece of the individual budgets as we're in the season doesn't seem to me to be a difficult thing to do if we're just factoring it. In other words, how important is it that by September 1st we have the increase rate in?
It makes it so much easier for everyone involved to only have to put their budgets together. And if we want to go to the budget committee, we should have the numbers that we want them to approve. And especially the compensation, that's always a hot topic.
I agree.
So it's difficult if we don't have the salaries taken care of by the time the budget's done.
I'm prepared to move forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead. May I pass it to Lloyd?
You certainly may.
The 5 years that I've been here, I've constantly said that our personnel, our people are our #1 resource. Buildings can burn down, cruisers get smashed, but it's our people. Everywhere I go in the last 5 years, I hear nothing but compliments about our full-time people, our part-time people, and our volunteers. You guys have worked on those committees. That's important. I believe in merit increases. Where we save in this town, think of this. Out of all of our employees, 51 of them, that includes, the part-time guys at the fire department, we only have 6 people we pay 40 hours a week to. We have 7 that work full-time at only 35 hours. We now then have 14 that work between 4 and 29 hours a week. And then we have 24 that work intermittent per diem. If we were to take 51 people times 40 hours times benefits, we'd be $1 million, or $1 million higher than we are. So first of all, we're pretty darn lucky in this town. We're pretty shrewd with the dollar, and we have dedicated people that do the job, a lot of them for not a whole lot of benefit. A 2% merit increase, if everybody were to get it this year, would be $22,216.20. That's all it will cost out of a $9 million cash flow. That's not a lot of money. I will then go one step further. Cost of living adjustments, and I went to Forbes, I went to a number of different places. Cost of living adjustment likely to rise to 3% in 2017 after zilch in 2016. The last 8 years has been very little inflation. I'll step back. That's why it makes good sense to put money aside, because we can earn interest. That's just an editorial comment. The Consumer Price Index shows an incremental 0.2% gain over the last 12 months. Partly because of fuel. The bottom's dropped out. That is a volatile thing that we all have to pay for, and it can go out of sight in a hurry, can't it? How long is lower gas prices going to work? They're magically covering up inflation. It talks about what they anticipate in the next year. And at the end, they make the comment, we anticipate a 3% cost of living change is in the cards for 2017. We're right now talking about 2017. I mean, it's more than a year away, actually, for some people's merit increase. This is what I would recommend. I would recommend that we budget $22,216.20 for merit increases, like we've done in the past. I would recommend that on the anniversary date, and I have them right here, half are before June 1st, half of them are after, that on the anniversary date, if people are eligible, again, merited, they get a 1% increase to cover inflation, cost of living, etc. That would be $11,108.10. What's interesting is that's if they got the 1% for the year. Where most everybody, is in March, April, and then the rest of the year. That figure comes out to $5,554.05. Now, so we're talking 22 and 5 in change. That's what I'm talking for increases. I will tell you though that there are some other pennies that are attached, because when you get $1 more or 10 cents more an hour, the police get 0.253 taken out for our share of their retirement. There's FICA, Medicare, things like that. That can be figured out. We're not talking $1 million there. We're talking pennies. But there is, here's where Diane on her sheet has that all listed by employee. If you accept that, then I have one other comment, but I don't want it to be confused with what we're talking about today.
My comment is on this is a major change in compensation, how we give compensation to our employees. I would say this requires a meeting with all of them. If we go forward with this change, they have to know from us.
I think that's a fair statement.
It has to be explained to them and get their input.
I think that's a fair statement.
The policy has always been, as long as I've been working for the town and selectmen, is that raises are effective January 1st across the board. So it is a major, major shift.
As I reflect on what you have suggested, a couple of questions, a couple of thoughts in mind. One is that if we're adjusting pay for inflation, that partial year as opposed to for the whole year, it saves the town money, but it doesn't get at the underlying, the dollar is worth a little bit less.
Right.
And so that's what we're doing the adjustment for. Second thought that I have is it adds another layer of complexity to our pay system, because what we're working from today is a table that is predictable. And if on May 1st, let's say, when somebody then has their inflation adjustment come into play, they're going to be at something that's off the table in some direction by whatever the percentage is in wages. So how does that work when we come to the next year's adjustment? It's a whole, it's another layer.
Yeah.
It's a wrinkle, yes. The other alternative is, first of all, there are changes that take place July 1st, because that's when the state of New Hampshire, and that's when the federal government, if it does make changes, that's when their rates change. So I would have no problem with saying the day after those rates change, so she only has to figure it once. Do you understand what I'm saying?
What rates does the federal government change on July 1st? I guess I'm not.
What if they change the withholding taxes? That's when they do it. They do it effective January, the 1st, July. And the state retirement for our fire, police, and employees, it's always effective July 1st. It's the fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
Any changes to payroll rates are effective January 1st? The change withholding, it's January 1st.
Okay.
The retirement system is only based on how much, it doesn't change how much they're earning. It changes the amount we take out for their retirement, so. I don't think that's part of our compensation here.
State retirement has two parts. The employee pays into it, let's say you're a firefighter, and the town pays into it. And that is actually a budgeted amount under our financial law.
Right.
And we know what it is because they tell us ahead of
Yes.
time. It's in our budget book. I personally am not in favor of changing when people get their raises. I know we've had these conversations before.
What are your thoughts?
My feeling is that if we're going to do an inflation adjustment, that we ought to do it for the full year and not on the anniversary date. And again, in my past, I've had much more experience with your increase comes based upon when your merit increase comes based upon a service anniversary or a performance review, that sort of thing. And if there's some general increase, which is an inflation adjuster, then everybody gets it for the whole year.
Right.
If the way we do things here is everybody gets their raise January 1st, and that's the way it's been, then I'm not suggesting that we turn the apple cart over. It's different than what I've worked with. But I do think that if we're gonna do a cost of living piece, that it ought to be applied
Right,
for the full
January
year. And coincidentally, if you do that, then rolling it right into the pay table becomes a much easier way to administer it. It's not two separate pieces that you're doing. It's incorporated and moves forward that way.
What you're suggesting is we take the current pay sheet matrix that we have to step 1, pay grade 1, we increase that by 3%. We increase that number by 3%, correct?
No,
No.
not by 3%.
No.
This example is 1.5%. But you know, whatever the number, the inflation adjuster that we agree on gets adjusted to everything.
Pay grade 1, pay grade, follow me now.
Yeah.
Pay grade 1, step 1 gets, and I'm going to, for sake of argument, I'm going to say 3%.
Okay.
That's the 2 raises I'm talking about. Then everything else is just 2% added on, correct? It's a mathematical formula.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Which is what has been. Yes. Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Basically,
Why is the first one 3%?
well, no, what you do is you start here and everything is 2% off of that.
The next step is 2% on that.
The
Right.
next
Each
one,
step is
Right.
based
Another
on a
two.
previous
Right.
step.
Yes.
But for instance, if somebody is at step 2 this year and they go to step 3 next year, that incorporates that additional amount of the inflation adjuster.
yes, it does.
So the relationship within the table remains the same,
Yes, it does.
Right.
and everybody has the same percentage benefit.
Last year, salary adjustments were how much? They were high 5 figures, weren't they? In 2 years, we adjusted everybody's salary, correct? To meet the table, correct?
Right.
Yep.
I mean, in over 2 years, wasn't it about $168,000 adjustments in just salaries over 2 years? I don't know if that's the right figures or not, but
Well,
it was substantial.
it was a substantial increase.
Yes, it
Absolutely a
was.
substantial increase, and it was done over 2 years
Yep.
because of that.
Sure.
But that's what we had agreed on
And I
after we
support
got
that.
the
Yes.
recommendations
Correct.
from Thornton.
And the committee supported it, and
Right.
no, the taxpayers did. This is what I'm interested in suggesting, follow my math. A 2% increase in wages and salary, including a 1% cost of living, whatever we call it, is 3%. People get that on their, if they merit it, just like we've been doing with all our pay raises the last 5 years. That comes out to a $33,324.30 increase in the budget, approximately. Are you happy with that $33,000 as an investment toward our people? I am. Are you?
So instead of a 3.5, which is what
It's-
we think
it's-
are,
It's a 3.
I'm saying 3,
you're reducing it.
yes. And instead of going on anniversary date or halfway through, I'm going back to the beginning of the year. I will make that a motion, but I'm not gonna go, if any people have real reservations about it. And then I have one other thing that's not related.
I think that it would be very helpful if we had some kind of policy on how we will do these things, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. I don't think it's right to just pick a number out of the air. 1.5, we have some information, right? You have information that indicates as of July. CPI is what, up 1.5? Is that what it was?
Yes.
So that's a real number
I
for
have
July of
my information
this
is
year.
it rising to 3% by the end of 2017. That's how I came up with the one. But we're pretty close.
That was
aren't we?
3% for 2017, which meant that anybody who gets Social Security gets 3% in January. It's effective January.
But they said no change this year. Right here.
2016 was no change. 2017 would be, they're projecting 3%, but that's not a real number right now.
But that's at the end of the year. At the end of 2017.
Now, how can I predict that for the whole year ahead? That's good.
Well,
For
That's why.
2017 is January 1st.
projections are great, okay?
That's exactly what it is.
But, you know, if what we base our adjustment on are historical numbers that are already in the book, then it's, we're not basing what we're adjusting on what we think is going to be next year.
Right. I think if we have a policy that says we look at what the CPI is as of July of the current year and use that number. Or, I don't know how else we can have some kind of policy going forward.
3.5%, that's 2% step, and 1.5% increase comes out to a cash outlay of $38,878.35, approximately. You comfortable with that amount being budgeted next year for wages and compensation?
I am.
Are you comfortable with it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll make that motion. For purposes of discussion, I'll make that motion.
Okay. I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion?
I think it's important that we understand the magnitude of the dollars that we're looking at, and it's also important that we have a reasonable basis that we move this thing forward on. And I'm comfortable with working with the BLS number as a piece to provide a cost of living adjustment to our pay grade. And, you know, we can get 15 people around the table and talk about what's the exact impact of changes in the prices of stuff that you and I and the guys on the street have to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different. And there may be a better proxy for what the cost adjustment in our particular area is, but I have not been able to find anything
Yeah, I don't know.
that would be and in the book, you know, number that's been arrived at that's closer to us than this Boston, Brockton, Nashua, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut consumer price index.
You know, to try to sell this, I could go back to my textbooks or whatever. If we were to take any one of our employees and they were to leave, the rule of thumb is it costs 1.5 times their salary to replace them. By the time you pay them off, you hire someone to research the new position, you interview them, you train the new person. It's better to maintain you, a good employee in that position. And if it means the 51 people I'm talking about in this community, of only 6 work 40 hours a week, and it's going to only cost us, what did I give you for a figure, 33,000? Or was it 38?
38,000.
I have no problem with that investment. I move the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next?
You voted on a motion having to do with the COLA, but I don't know if you had introduced the motion. You didn't I wasn't exactly sure what you were actually voting on during this meeting.
You have the motion there, Karen?
Carol,
I don't know. Oh, good.
I'm sorry,
Oh, no,
I
go
didn't know,
Go.
September 13th, the next official meeting,
Yes?
nothing between now and then.
No. Not unless they want to meet.
I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay,
It was to approve the 3.5% to 2% merit plus the 1.5% COLA, and that had that total amount of 38,000, and I have to listen for the other dollars, but seconded by Selectman Marcus, and we're all in favor.
Okay, so my question
But,
is,
excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'm
Matt,
sorry.
sorry. And then, but I think I know what you might be, Selectman would move to question, and that's all, I don't know what, you would have moved to question after.
You moved the question.
That's just a procedural
To
thing,
stop
end
discussion.
debate.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's okay.
so my question was, the COLA is adjusting the pay schedule.
Right.
And then if somebody has a positive performance review, then they get a step increase. But they don't get an automatic raise, which is what a COLA is. It's an automatic raise. But they don't get that unless they get the merit. Basically what you're doing is just increasing the amount that's in the schedule, so that when they get their merit raise, it's 2% plus whatever the adjustment is.
And if they don't take a step, then they just get the adjustment.
They do get the adjustment.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure, that's what.
But that wasn't, that you didn't make that clear at all. So what you're saying is that town employees automatically get a raise every year, just to be clear.
No, it doesn't say that. Every year.
If you're talking about COLA,
Yeah.
not necessarily a COLA every year. There wasn't any COLA in this year.
But if, so, and you're basing it on the,
ALS numbers. Right.
so if there's an increase there, public employees get an automatic raise based on that.
If the selectmen adopt an inflation adjustment, then everybody that's an employee will get that inflation adjustment.
Whether or not they get the 2%.
Whether or not they receive a merit increase or not.
So if they get a poor performance review, they would still get a raise. Is that what you're saying?
There's two pieces here, right? What we talked about today and what we adjusted into the pay schedule is an inflation adjuster. So if somebody doesn't get a merit increase for whatever reason,
For instance, a poor performance review.
well, in my opinion, if you give people poor performance reviews, then I'd be working for you for all.
It's a moot point.
Yeah, that is, I would say that they would not get any adjustment.
They would not get any of that.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, anybody with poor performance.
So really, the cost of living adjustment is tied to a positive performance review.
In effect, yes.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say so.
Yeah, if sure.
So there is no,
There are other things
Automatic
that come into play when
raise.
you have a poor performance review.
okay. It wasn't clear from your discussion to me. I have here the 2016 Personnel Administration spreadsheet. And I have also here from the State Bureau of Employment Security. The town employees, the average for full-time, this is roughly, full-time employees receive total compensation average of around $70,000 a year. Might be more specific if you had better numbers. The per capita income in Tuftonboro is $33,000. Now, bear in mind that $33,000 includes the town employees who live in town. And the average compensation for town employees is much higher than that. So if you were able to remove the town employees from the calculation of the per capita income in Tuftonboro, it would actually be less than $33,000. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not to question whether a certain employee of the town deserves their income. It's to say, is it sustainable for a town, which is a small town, a town where the per capita income is $33,000, is it sustainable for us to be paying the town employees more than twice as much as the people who live in town? So that's just a question. Is it sustainable? You don't have to answer it now. It's just something that you should think about, Carla, and
Oh, I will.
all of you. It's not about, I'm not saying it's not about whether a particular employee deserves the income that they're receiving. That's not why I'm bringing this up today. And I would have appreciated the opportunity to talk to you during your meeting before you voted. Last meeting, Lloyd said, when you tabled the issue last meeting, he said, we welcome questions from the public. So I requested to be on the agenda, and you refused twice. So I think...
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't refuse anybody to be on the agenda. Did you, Carolyn? Did you ask to be on the agenda today?
Even if he was on the agenda, you would not take part in the compensation conversation.
I asked to share my thoughts with you before you voted. I wouldn't presume to be part of it.
You're talking about the other day?
I emailed on Friday and I asked to be on the agenda for today so that I could share my thoughts before you voted.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I don't want to...
I got my agenda on Friday, and I prepared all weekend for the meeting. If something has come in, I don't know what you're talking about, sir, but I apologize if I have to.
I do not apologize. I set the agenda.
A leader who listens.
Thank you, Guy.
You're welcome.
You know, in fairness...
Max, you have an opportunity to speak after the meeting.
After you vote, when it's meaningless. So...
Well, you would have been on the agenda before we talked about this. The appointments are done before we discuss compensation. You were not going to be a part of the compensation discussion.
I would never presume to be part of the discussion.
If you were on the
on
agenda,
board.
how would you have given your thoughts on it if you didn't even know what we were gonna be discussing?
You said last week that you were going to be talking about it today.
So you would have given me your thoughts before we discussed it?
I asked to share my thoughts before you voted on it in an email on Friday.
You can still give your opinion on it.
Yeah.
There is no month goes by that the selectmen here don't change their minds on something after listening to somebody. No, please don't take it personal.
I don't take it personal, and I hope that none of you, I've said before that my particular disagreements with various people on various issues is nothing personal.
Sure.
I have a question.
No, what's interesting is a lot of towns, after, I think it's noontime or 3 o'clock on Thursday, don't allow any but new business. It's cast in stone. I know of several towns that operate that way.
Yeah, I already had my agenda
Yeah,
before your request came in anyway.
yeah.
Can I ask?
We can talk afterwards if you want. We shouldn't take up their time.
Well, this is public
Bill has to
meeting, so go ahead.
I wasn't sure what you meant when you said the per capita is 33,000 and town employees make twice as much. Do you mean an increase of
According to the New Hampshire Employment Security Bureau statistics from January 2016, the per capita income in Tuftonboro is $33,000. According to the compensation spreadsheet for town employees, if you add up compensation for full-time employees, and it's rough because I was making a guess as
That's 13 people, right?
I would have to pull them out separately again. I mean,
Well,
it's roughly
Full-time by
Yeah.
state law, by federal law, by Obamacare is...
Right, they're
if you make-
different.
If you make 35, if you work 35 hours a week or more. We have 6 that are 40 hours, we have 7 that are 35 hours. That's 13 people. So if those 13 people are averaging $70,000 a year to take home,
Well, I pulled out, 11,000 is obviously not a full-time employee, 16,000, 7,000. So I pulled out those numbers. I might have been off and,
Sure.
roughly speaking. I did, if you add up all of these numbers, the average is like around 52,000. So,
all 51 employees average $51,000.
yeah, but, a person who earns 7,000 at the library is not very average, so these are rough numbers. My point is, the town employees are being compensated at a pretty significantly higher rate than people who work in the private sector in town. And again, I'm not questioning whether the town employees deserve their salaries and their compensation. I'm asking, is it sustainable?
You're asking us to think about that.
Yeah, just to think
Sure.
about it,
Well,
yeah.
that's a reasonable
Yeah.
question, okay, I understand.
So that's it, I'm just,
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn.
Second. Well, how's the summer been?
All in favor, please?
Yes, all in favor?
Thank you very much.
Like we would say no.